What's going on, Nerd Squad, and welcome back to Top 10 Nerd. The Avengers are a household name at this point. They made their comic book debut back in the 60s. Their movies have brought in billions of dollars, literally billions of dollars. And they're a team of supers who actually had a pretty rocky start, at least for some of those members. So here to break down our top 10 Avengers who used to be villains, I'm Taylor McWatters. Let's dive in. Number 10, Scarlet Witch. So many of us like to see the Scarlet Witch as this misunderstood magic user that is just looking for love. Well, she used to be one of the original members of the Brotherhood of Evil. She was teamed up with Magneto right from the start, and for years she thought her powers were only mutant powers. I mean, it made sense her brother Quicksilver was a mutant and the two of them were both working for Magneto. He was a mutant and everybody they were fighting was also a mutant. But after Scarlet Witch and her brother decided to part ways from the Brotherhood, they would decide that they needed to start using their powers for good and join the Avengers. It's wild how in comic books you can go from domestic terrorist to hero like that fast. It's incredible. But even after Scarlet Witch would decide to be a hero, it wouldn't be the last time she would do something to hinder nearly every hero in the world. And of course, I'm referring to the infamous M-Day would have Scarlet Witch use her powers to rewrite reality and see it to that the mutants are nearly extinct. This was partly caused by her relationship with Magneto, who's her dad, and a very not great dad, I can also say. And before we go to number 9, if you guys could go ahead and give us a thumbs up on this video because it does go a long way for our channel. Helps us out quite a bit. You guys are the best. Now back to some Avengers who used to be villains. Number 9, Wonder Man. It's hard to know in the Marvel Universe when you're being tricked because everyone has got a plan up their sleeve, even the good guys. But if you're working with a tactical Baron von Zemo, then you better believe that he's doing something dirty behind the scenes. See, Wonder Man used to just be a regular working class man. Actually, his story is nearly identical to that of the Vulture in the MCU. He's a working man. Stark puts him out of the business and then he has to do whatever he can to try and make ends meet. So eventually he's given the option to use advanced tech to get back at the people who wronged him, and he loves the idea of that. I mean, I'm kind of on board with that too. Let's do it. That opportunity would come back when Baron von Zemo would approach him with a proposition. He would give Wonder Man, who was then just Simon Williams, the power of ionic energy so he could have the power to crush Iron Man. But partway through his anger faded and he decided that taking on Iron Man wasn't the answer after all. So the two of them turned on Baron von Zemo. But here's the catch. The Baron isn't going to get caught with his pants down. He had Poison Williams who would soon die after. So his hero life was short-lived because once you die in comics, you are dead forever. Moment of silence. Only for a bit because he came back later on. Yeah, he came back. He was brought from the dead and is now a registered member of the Avengers. So welcome back. Number 8, The Winter Soldier. You should know the story of the Winter Soldier by now. If you've not seen that movie yet, please go check it out because it's arguably the best movie in the MCU. And the story of the Winter Soldier has more flip-flops than a beach in Florida. The Winter Soldier was formerly Bucky Barnes, the best friend and right-hand man of Captain America. A tragic accident would have him fall to his death, or so Steve Rogers thought. It turns out Hydra got a hold of him and used some experimental tech to not only give him one of the most badass robotic arms that I've ever seen, but they also brainwashed him to be a living weapon. They used his advanced war training and then embedded him with Hydra assassination techniques. He was then frozen over and over again, only to be thawed out when Hydra needed to send him out to kill somebody. But eventually he would cross paths with Steve Rogers and the old memories would come flooding back to him. He would fight back against his Hydra programming and turn to become a good guy, even if he had to fight Iron Man to do it. Number 7, Hawkeye. Man, to think that one of the main members of the MCU used to be a bad guy, I mean, like, it's not that hard to believe now, but when you see him break down in Avengers Endgame and start chasing down gangs in Tokyo, then it all starts to make sense how this guy can have a dark side. But the first couple of times that we see Hawkeye show up, he was working with Black Widow, someone who actually we'll be mentioning later on this list. She would get him to tag along on missions where the two of them had to take down the flying tin can man known as Iron Man. But there wasn't enough hate in Hawkeye's heart to keep him on the dark side, and he eventually swapped over to work with the heroes, and since then, he hasn't looked back. Number 6, Loki. Now, never an official member of the Avengers. I mean, he didn't stand with them when every hero in the MCU teamed up to storm Thanos' army and save the universe, but he did some of the most heroic acts that set everything up so the Avengers could save the day. He summoned Surtur so that he could take out Hela. He teamed up with Thor to save the people of Asgard, and he even threw his life on the line to try and kill Thanos. The guy's time as a hero is pretty short-lived, but he did come through when it counted, and I think the Avengers will look back at him as one of the most heroic members of them all. Just saying. Number 5, Red Hulk. I really love the Hulk's villains. I mean, you have the leader, which kind of represents the opposite of the Hulk, all brains with very little brawn. But then so many of his other villains are just like him, but slightly different, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Let's just get 2 cannonballs and fire them at each other and see what happens. Boom. The results are usually pretty explosive. Well, if you didn't know, Red Hulk is the general who always wanted the Hulk dead. Thaddeus Ross. I guess he went down the if you can't beat him, join him line, thinking that when it came to taking out the big green beast, he was actually able to keep his identity a secret, but once it was finally revealed who he was, it would be Captain America that would team up with him. With the 2 of them having a military background, it kind of made sense. It also made sense for the Red Hulk to become a hero. I mean, Thaddeus wasn't that far off in his quest to stop the Hulk, even though the big green beast is a force for good most of the time. He would be seen as a threat to everybody else around him. And Thaddeus seemed to have better control over his version of the Hulk than Bruce ever did. Number 4, Namor. It doesn't matter what comic book universe you're in, you gotta have a fish dude. That's just a staple of how everything works, that's it. And for the Marvel Universe, we of course have Namor. The Submariner, he was actually one of the original villains in Marvel. The dude's pretty old, with his first comic coming out in 1939. He's the ruler of Atlantis, and he didn't like the way things were handled on the surface, so he decided to duke it out with the people walking on land. Turns out that he wasn't a match for the people on the surface, so he decided to join them. He would eventually team up with the Avengers, but even though he was now fighting side by side with them, he's always had a superiority complex when it comes to dealing with surface-dwelling super people. And even though the Avengers saw him as an ally, when push came to shove, he would ditch them and team with the X-Men to try and take down the Avengers. He even flooded Wakanda, which seems like a bit of an overreaction. He's always had a sore spot when it comes to the Black Panther. I think maybe it's because he hates seeing a surface civilian as advanced as Atlanteans. Could be. Number 3, Vision. Even though the MCU will have you thinking that Vision was made by the Avengers to take out Ultron, it was really the other way around. Hank Pym's least favorite kid would make the android as a tool to take out the Avengers. I guess he didn't feel like getting his hands dirty that day. Okay. Well, he should have done a better job at programming the damn thing, because while fighting the Avengers, Vision decides to swap sides and teaming up with the good guys, which in the end seems to be the worst possible thing that could happen for Ultron. You build something to kill the Avengers, but then it turns on you, and then the Avengers are now stronger, but then all the secrets that this machine knows about you will be leaked to them. But now Vision has become one of the most famous members of the Avengers, with him and Wanda starring in the new WandaVision TV show on Disney+. And don't worry if you haven't gotten around to watching that yet. I'm not going to ruin anything for you, but you definitely should go and watch it right now. We're only 3 episodes in, so you got time to catch up before it ends. Plenty of time. Number 2, Black Widow. I mean, her name is Black Widow, so I mean, that's not usually how heroes are named unless they're an anti-hero, like the Punisher, you know? It should be no surprise that she's super sneaky, and she actually used to be one of Iron Man's greatest villains. The Black Widow started out as an agent sent over from Russia to bring down one of the founding members of the Avengers. It's kind of weird to think that in Marvel universes that would be developed down the line, she would be one of the founding members. It's awesome. But the villain was just so popular that nobody wanted to see her go. And after the Cold War ended, the story of a Russian agent that was sent over to dismantle a part of America that everybody loved just wasn't as compelling as it once was. And number 1, Doctor Doom. Now I know this is only for a limited time, but it's still so wild that it deserves a spot on this list, a very high spot on this list. We're talking about the same Doctor Doom that once was ruling Battleworld, the same Doctor Doom that stole Odin's powers, the same guy. He's one of the biggest, baddest villains that gives Thanos a run for his money with the amount of schemes that he's pulled. Well, there was a time when Victor Von Doom suffered a pretty serious blow to the head, an injury that would take out most people, but we're not talking about most people, are we? Valeria came through to fix up Doom's brain, and not long after that, he was working with the good guys. Right around this time, Tony was in a deep coma, so someone needs to step in the role of Iron Man, and who better than Doctor Doom himself? Having Doom become Iron Man for that brief moment was one of the coolest moments ever, hands down. Well, there you have it, guys. Which of these Avengers are now your favorite heroes? I think mine has to be Scarlet Witch. I'm just loving WandaVision so far. Again, if you haven't seen it, you gotta go watch it. You have to. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching, guys. I've been your host, Taylor McWatters, and we'll catch you in the next one. Peace.